So how's everyone doing? And this is chapter 2 of our course on microeconomics. And today we will be treating the theory of consumer behavior, the theory of consumer behavior. And so let's dive straight into it. What is the theory of consumer behavior? The theory of consumer behavior is a fundamental economic concept that seeks to understand how individuals choose what goods and services to consume. All right, so this chapter will examine some assumptions of consumer preferences, utility. Utility means satisfaction, okay? We're going to take a look at indifference curve, and we're going to also examine budget line. All right, so let's dive straight into axioms or assumptions of consumer preferences. Okay, so um, what are the axioms of consumer preferences? Okay, first of all, what are preferences? The preferences refers to an individual's likes or dislikes regarding goods and services. Okay, in a more simple explanation, preferences simply refers to things that you prefer. For example, you prefer a Nike over Adidas, you prefer, we all have our preferences, okay? So the literal meaning of preferences relates to the things that you prefer, okay? Consumer preferences are choices that consumers make to maximize their satisfaction, okay? You remember in the first chapter when I talked about the overview of economics, I told you that the goal of individuals or household is to maximize their satisfaction, okay? So consumer preferences are choices that consumers make to maximize their satisfaction. All right. Choices arise due to scarcity. I've already talked about scarcity in our previous class, which I talked about limited resources as a result of unlimited human wants or needs. All right. So, and those are the reasons why we choose. We choose because the resources are not enough to meet our needs. For example, if I ask you a question, tell me 10 places you would like to go right now, you would tell me the 10 places you would like to go, right? And I will also ask you a question. Maybe tell me those things that are stopping you to travel to those places or to go to those places. Okay. You might tell me finances. You might give me a list of reasons why you might not be able to go to those places at once. So you have to choose based on the resource or based on the resources that are available to you. So choice is the reason why we choose is because if we don't have all the resources that we need um, to meet those needs, so we have to choose. So choices arise due to scarcity. Thus, when making trade-offs, okay, to choose means that you have to let go of something in order to meet a more pressing need. In our first chapter, that's what I called opportunity cost, the real cost of alternative for God. The cost you have to let to forgo the thing or that choice or that decision you have to let to forgo in order to meet a more pressing need. All right. So, and that's what the trade-off is. Trade-off is you have to give up something to have something else. Okay. Thus, when making trade-offs because of scarcity, some assumptions are made. When making trade-offs because of scarcity, some assumptions are made. Let's take a look at those assumptions. I'm sure you fall within one of these categories. Okay. Let's take a look at completeness. Okay. So now we're diving straight to the assumptions or axioms, okay, of consumer preferences. Okay. What are those? Uh, how do you choose? What are those theories that relates to you choosing one good to another? Okay. So the first one is completeness. Okay. A preference is said to be complete when a consumer satisfies any of the three conditions about two bundles. Okay, a preference is said to be complete when a consumer satisfies any of the three conditions about two bundles. Okay, what's the first one? A is preferred to B. Okay, so anytime you go to the market or anytime you go to the store, you might have different options to choose from. But you would always, I mean, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you will prefer a particular product to another product. Okay? You will prefer a particular product to another product. Okay, that's what it means by A is preferred to B. So we could say that A, for example, is Nike and that B is Adidas. We could say a preference is said to be complete if you prefer Nike to Adidas, right? That's one of the options. When you go to the market, that's one of the options that you come up with. Okay, I just prefer this to that. That's a normal thing. Okay, the second is that, I mentioned Nike to Adidas. You might also prefer Adidas to Nike. All right, it's a choice. It's your own preference. It's what you prefer. All right. And number three, we also have a set of people that when they go to the store, they prefer both goods. They prefer both Nike and they prefer both Adidas. So A is equally preferred to B. Simply means that Nike, I prefer Nike and I also prefer Adidas. I prefer both of them. Okay. In that case, we'll say the consumer is indifferent. In that case, we say a consumer is indifferent. Okay. So a preference is said to be complete if you satisfy any of these three conditions. Now, A greater than B, it means you prefer one product to another. A B greater than A, you will prefer one product to another. Maybe Nike greater than Adidas, Adidas greater than Nike. And the third one is you are indifferent. You prefer both products or both goods. And if you take a look at it, you fall within one of these categories. You fall within one of these categories. Anytime you want to purchase things and you have to choose, you fall within one of these categories. It's either you choose one, choose the other, or you prefer both of them. Let's write on. Second one, okay, transitivity. Okay, we say preferences are transitive if they are internally consistent. Okay, if A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A must be preferred to C. A greater than B, B greater than C, the A is greater than C. If consumers prefer C to A, the consumer could be labeled as inconsistent. Okay, so the thing about all things being equal, ceteris paribus, the thing about consumers or we consumers or we human beings is that we tend to be rational, or there are extreme cases, all right, but in our behavior, we tend to be consistent in the kind of things that we like. Okay, so someone might prefer a certain type of shoe design, and if you take a look at that person's wardrobe, you might see that consistent pattern across the person's shoe rack. Okay, and so human beings, all things being equal, could be said to be rational because we could be consistent in the things that we buy or in the things that we consume. Okay, so now let me give you a scenario. If you have, I usually give this scenario to my students a lot. If you have an iPhone, let's make an iPhone to be good A. You have a Samsung, let's make it as good B, and you have a Techno, let's make it as good C. All right. So in transitivity, okay, and when we say preference is transitive, we are saying that if you as an individual prefer an iPhone to a Samsung, it means that you prefer A to B, and you prefer Samsung to a Techno, which is B to C. That's what it means by B greater than C. There's every tendency, because you're all things being equal, okay, that you would also prefer an iPhone to a Techno, which is A greater than C. Okay, that is what we refer to as being rational or being consistent as a consumer. So you remember here I said, I further mentioned that if a consumer prefers C to A, the consumer could be labeled as inconsistent. Okay, the consumer could be labeled as inconsistent. Okay, so we have completeness. Okay, I've talked about completeness. We have transitivity. Okay, now we are going to more is better, which we refer to as non-satiation. More is better, which is referred to as non-satiation. Okay, this assumption states that consumers will prefer more of a good to less of it. The good here can be labeled, can be called economic good. An economic good is a good that positively benefits people. Okay, so before I go further, here is simply saying that as a consumer, you would always prefer more of a good, more of an economic good, a good that benefits you, no matter how many that you have. So for someone who has 50 cars, the person wouldn't mind having an extra car. Okay, if I give the person an extra car, the person will be so happy, right? For someone who has 50 shoes, for someone who has, things that benefit you, you wouldn't mind having an extra pair. All right, you wouldn't mind having an extra pair. All right, so that refers to as more is better. We would always prefer something, more of something that benefits us. We would always prefer more of something that is beneficial to us. All things being equal, okay? So if the thing is going to be beneficial to us, we refer to it as an economic good. Because I said an economic good is a good that has positive benefits, a good that positively benefits people, or a good that has positive benefits to people. This shows that higher quantities of goods are linked to higher satisfaction, okay? While low quantities of goods are linked to lower satisfaction. So you are having more of the good because you believe it's going to give you much more satisfaction, all right? On the other hand, economic bad also exists. So economic bad is a good that is not beneficial to you. Okay, something that that harms your health. For example, when a car is consistently bringing out pollution, you wouldn't want that because that is not beneficial to you. Okay, or when people are consistently polluting your environment with garbage or with things that are detrimental to your health, you wouldn't want that. Now, climate change in the area of um, uh, a change in climate, or in the area of climate effects such as drought, such as earthquakes, such as things such as floods, excessive rainfalls, you wouldn't want that. That would not bring comfort to you. Traffic congestion, you wouldn't want more of traffic congestion because that would delay you. That will make you get to work late, or that will make you you won't be as productive as you would be because you'll be wasting time in traffic. Okay, so we want more of an economic good that will be beneficial to us, and we don't want a good that will not be beneficial to us, which we refer to as economic bad. Okay, so let's take a look at the graph of more is better. Okay, we're going to explain the graph of more is better on non-satiation. Okay, So let's take a look at this. If you look at this position here, B, so this area here shows you more is better. You consume more of good B, and so this gives you more satisfaction. Okay, this gives you an higher satisfaction, right? This area of R here shows you are consuming less of good A and good B. Okay, so you are consuming less of good A and good B, which gives you lesser satisfaction. Of course, you prefer good B. You prefer a position of B than a position of R. This is the position that satisfies more is better. What about these areas of question mark? This area of question mark shows you, for example, if A is, for example, if you increase A, okay, consume more of good A, and good B remains the same, I can't tell if your satisfaction is increasing. Okay, I can't tell because you are not having more of both goods in a situation where you have to choose between, when you have to choose consume both goods. You are not having more of both goods, and so I can't tell if there's an increase in your satisfaction. Okay, although you are having more of good A and good B stays the same. At the same time, if A remains the same and you are consuming more of good B, I can't also tell if your level of satisfaction is increasing. I can't tell if your level of satisfaction is increasing because your A is constant and B is increasing. All right, you're consuming more good B. Okay, so this question mark shows that A, I can't tell if there's an increase in your level of satisfaction, but these levels of B shows more is better or non-satiation. You're having higher level of satisfaction. Excuse me. And R shows that you are consuming less of good A and B, which shows lesser satisfaction. So this point B shows you more is better or satisfies the condition of non-satiation, right? Now, let's take a look at the explanation. In figure 2.1, area B denotes the combination of good A and good B that is referred to the combination of A star and B star. The combination of good A and good B in area R is inferior to the combination of good A star and B star, while the area in the question marks may or may not be superior to A star and B star. Okay, just like I told you, right? All right, so from this point upwards, that satisfies non-satiation, or more is better. Now, so we've dealt with, so remember in the beginning I said this chapter will examine some assumptions of consumer preferences. We've dealt with that. What are those assumptions? Completeness, transitivity, and more is better. Okay, you have some others, all right, but I'll just give you these. These are kind of the most important ones to discuss about. Okay, so now we will go to utility. Okay, utility means satisfaction, right? Utility means satisfaction. So let's go to the concept of utility. Utility means satisfaction. It is the satisfaction a consumer derives from the consumption of goods and services, or it is satisfaction a consumer derives from consuming a commodity, okay, good or service. All right, so the satisfaction you derive from buying a phone, buying a shoe, going to the hospital, okay, and for the doctor to attend to you. All right, so the satisfaction you derive from the consuming activities that you carry out, whether it's buying a good or purchasing them or a service. Now, under utility, we can categorize it as cardinal and ordinal utility. So let's take a look at cardinal utility. So the concept of cardinal utility is, the proponent is Alfred Marshall, right? Which we talked about Alfred Marshall when we were in our introductory class, when we were talking about overview of economics and definition of economics. All right. Utility is measurable. It can be measured in numbers. All right. So cardinal utility is when utility is measurable. You can attach numbers to it. Okay. The utility of a commodity equals the money a consumer is willing to pay for it. All right. So if you are willing to part with $10 to buy a pair of shoes, all things being equal, then we could say that is a cardinal utility. We could say utility is measurable, because how do I measure your satisfaction? I measure your satisfaction because you willingly put your hands in your pocket, you brought out the money to buy those pairs of shoes. Okay, so the utility of a commodity equals the money a consumer is willing to pay for it. The assumptions of cardinal utility include rationality. So I talked about rationality when I was talking about axioms of consumer preferences. Okay, you're rational, you're consistent as a consumer. Okay, you have other people who are inconsistent, but that is outside of that scope, because you would have cases that don't follow such assumptions. But if we take a look at a general human behavior, human beings are expected to be rational. Even in their behavior, you can easily tell how someone is going to behave. Just observe, excuse me, just observe their pattern over time. You can tell how they're going to behave. So limited money income. So limited money income is what you are going to buy is limited by the amount of money you have in your pocket. If you have $10,000, what you're going to buy is based on that $10,000 you is based on that $10,000 you have. Is that how you spend all? You spend less, or you spend the exact? Spend all or spend less. You can't spend more than what you don't have. Utility is additive. So utility is additive simply means we can easily add utility up, because we can measure it based on the amount of money you're willing to pass away with, then that can easily be added up. Okay, we also have constant utility of money. Okay, whether you buy $10 of shoes or $20 of shoes or $30 of chocolate, we assume that the satisfaction you derive from purchasing each of those commodities are the same. Okay, just because you spend more in buying a good does not mean it's going to give you more satisfaction. So under cardinal utility, we assume that irrespective of the amount of money that you spend, you still feel satisfied. That is the bottom line. But furthermore, for the law of diminishing marginal utility to hold, it is assumed that goods are consumed within a given period. So we're going to give further explanations on the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, we're going to talk about that when we are explaining cardinal utility further. So the second type of utility is ordinal utility, and that the proponent is proposed by Gerard Hicks. Okay, and what does ordinal utility say? The ordinal utility says that utility cannot be measured in numbers, but can be ranked in preferences. Okay. The ordinal utility assumptions entail rationality. We've talked about that. Diminishing marginal rate of substitution. We're going to talk about that. Transitivity and consistency of choice, and non-certainty, which is non-satisfied. Okay, non-satiation or non-certainty, or non-certainty means more is better. More of a good is better, which we talked about in axioms of consumer preferences. Now, let's go further into cardinal utility. Under cardinal utility, we have the following concept. Okay, first of all is total utility. Total utility basically is the total satisfaction that you have, okay, in consuming a given amount of or quantity of a good or a service. The total satisfaction that you have, okay. Marginal utility. So all still under the concept of cardinal utility, we have marginal utility. The marginal utility means extra or additional. Marginal utility denotes the additional utility you get from consuming an additional unit of a commodity. Okay? So, for example, if you go to the market to buy 10,000 pair of shoes, all right, those 10,000 pairs of shoes, we can easily measure, oh, that gives you like a total satisfaction, the total utility. Now, if you decide to buy one more extra pair aside those 10,000, so that extra that you bought, we are looking at the extra satisfaction is going to give you. That's why it says marginal utility means extra. The meaning of marginal means extra or additional. So marginal utility simply means the extra satisfaction you would get from that extra pair of shoe that you have bought. Okay, so what is the formula of that? So the formula of that simply is changes in total utility divided by changes in quantity. And also under cardinal utility, we have the law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility. What does the law of diminishing marginal utility say? The law of diminishing marginal utility is the decrease in satisfaction a consumer gets from consuming an additional unit of a commodity. So let's use this graph to explain that. So let's take a look at this graph to explain that. Before I take a look at the graph, okay, so the basic idea behind that is, remember that I said that when I was talking about the cardinal utilities I was trying to explain, I mentioned something about the consumption of good here in terms of law of diminishing marginal utility. The law holds when you are consuming a good within a given time frame or within a given period, let's say 2 months or 3 months. If you stop consuming that good and you wait maybe after 6 months, I mean, your satisfaction can be, your curiosity of consuming that good can be refreshed. Or you can still even have you can still get satisfied from consuming that good. So this law of diminishing marginal utility holds within a given time period. All right. So what does the law say? The law of diminishing marginal utility is the decrease in satisfaction a consumer gets from consuming an additional unit of a commodity. So if, for example, you take rice every day, you take rice in the morning, afternoon, night, you keep eating rice for the next 10 days, every time, without any pause. What do you think might happen on the 11th day, all things being equal? You might dislike rice in such a way that you wouldn't want to eat it any longer. Till maybe you give it some time, then you can consume it again. So if you keep consistently taking something, remember I'm using the time, all things being equal. You have exceptional cases that even if you don't want to take something, you keep taking it, and that has become an habit. That is an exceptional case. That is a different scenario. That is an inconsistent behavior. That's when habits kick in, okay? Because you have the habit, even if you are tired of it, because it does not become part of your life. Even if it's harming you, because it has become part of your life, it is difficult to break such an habit. So habits are part of, they are difficult to break. So it would take a much more superior habit, something that maybe you would like to enjoy that will benefit you to break the present habit. All right, they are difficult to break. All right. So, but all things being equal, if you keep consuming something consistently over time, there's a very high tendency that you will get tired of it. So you have to give yourself a break, and you come back, and you can take that good or that service again. All right. So do you understand it? If you keep taking something over time, you might get tired of it. That's why it says that you decrease the satisfaction the consumer gets from consumer additional unit of commodity. The more and more of the commodity you consume, the less and less satisfaction you get from it. So let's explain from this graph. If you take a look at this graph, you see total utility here. If you keep consuming a good, okay, it increases. You keep consuming an extra unit, it gives you, you have, from consuming good, you have total satisfaction. Okay, your total utility keeps increasing. But the more of that good that you consume, the lesser, look at the marginal utility is downward sloping. The lesser satisfaction you get from that extra unit that you're consuming, the lesser satisfaction that you get. So the more goods you consume within a given time, the lesser satisfaction that you get. Right? So, but it will get to a time, I mentioned that on the 10th day, on the 11th day, what happens? You reach your maximum. And if you reach your maximum, what happens to the marginal utility? It's zero, meaning that marginal utility is zero simply means that if you consume any extra unit, it gives you a lesser satisfaction. Any extra unit that you consume gives you a lesser satisfaction. Zero means gives you no satisfaction, no extra satisfaction. Okay, gives you no extra satisfaction. Okay, and if you consume any extra from that when total utility is maximum, your total utility begins to decline and your marginal utility is negative. Marginal utility is negative simply means if you take that good again, you might want to throw up. It nauseates you, it irritates you because you've taken it consistently over time. So the more and more good that you consume, initially your total utility increases, but at the end of the day, when your TU gets to the maximum, your marginal utility becomes zero. And when your total utility decreases, then your marginal utility becomes negative. Okay? I hope that is clear. So let's go to the consumer equilibrium under cardinal utility. Okay? So we could have equilibrium condition is a single case, and we could also have equilibrium condition in more than one commodity case. So the consumer is in equilibrium in the case of a single commodity when marginal utility is equal to the price paid for the commodity, which is ME of X equals P of X, the price of X. Let's look at equilibrium condition in the case of more than one commodity. This is called the law of equimarginal utility. This law states that consumers will spend their money income on different goods in such a way that the marginal utility of money expenditure on each good is equal. I already mentioned that. This means that the consumer will allocate their income so that they can get the same amount of satisfaction from each dollar spent. If a consumer consumes two goods or more, okay, so more than two commodity case, you'd have marginal utility of X divided by price of X equals marginal utility of Y over price of Y. Okay, so these are the equilibrium conditions for equilibrium conditions under cardinal utility. Okay, so you understand cardinal utility. Cardinal utility simply means when utility is measurable and can be measured in terms of numbers. Okay, and I gave you those assumptions that you have under cardinal utility. You have total utility, you have marginal utility, you have law of diminishing marginal utility. So the law of diminishing marginal utility says the more and more of a good that you consume over time, the lesser satisfaction that you have. Okay, to a state where any extra satisfaction that you, any extra that you consume of that good will lead to your marginal utility becoming negative. Okay, that's when total utility is at maximum. And what is the equilibrium condition for cardinal utility? You have marginal utility of X over price of X in a single commodity case. And you have in a more than one commodity case, 2 commodities, 3 commodities, you have marginal utility of X over P of X equals marginal utility of Y over P of Y equals marginal utility of Z over P of Z, depending on the number of commodities, all right? But you're going to have the same satisfaction across those goods that you're consuming. Now, let's take a look at ordinal utility. So I said cardinal measured in terms of number. Ordinal utility cannot be measured in terms of numbers, but can be ranked in terms of preferences. Okay, you can measure your satisfaction based on the number of goods that you consume, but we can be able to ascertain your satisfaction in terms of preferences. Okay, and what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, so indifference curve shows the combination of 2 goods. Okay, those 2 goods could be 2 bundles of goods, all right, 2 basket of goods. It does not necessarily have to be just 2 goods, units of goods. There could be 2 bundles. Okay, when you go to the market, there are some set of goods that you buy. That's a bundle. When you go to the clothes store, there's some set of goods that you buy. That's a bundle. All right. So a bundle could be, you could have a lot of things in a bundle, similar goods that you do buy. All right. So it doesn't have to be individual goods or units of goods. So an indifference curve shows the combination of 2 goods that gives equal levels of satisfaction. The curve is also called iso-utility curve or equal utility curve. Curve is presented in figure 2.3. The characteristics of indifference curves are. All right, so for an indifference curve, it says the combination of 2 goods here. That means that for an indifference curve, let's see, where's the graph? So I want to show you what that combination, so you have good A and good B. It doesn't matter if you consume more of good A or good B, it will give you the same level of satisfaction. So whether I consume 6 of good A or 2 of good B or 4 of good A and 4 of good B or 2 of good A, 6 of good B, it will give you the same level of satisfaction. Okay? So this is an indifference curve. And what are the characteristics? Okay, an indifference curve is downward sloping. Okay, this is a negative slope. It is convex to the origin. You can see that. Indifference curves do not intersect. The intersection of indifference curves means 2 different levels of satisfaction. We'll get there. Then higher indifference curves represent higher level of satisfaction. So if you have one here, another indifference curve, if an indifference curve goes higher, what that means is that you can produce more of good A and can produce more of good B. Okay, that's what it means. So an higher indifference curve means higher level of satisfaction. Okay, so let's take a look at that part that says, okay, let's take the indifference map. An indifference map simply is more than one indifference curve. You can see here, this is an indifference map where you have more than one indifference curve. Okay, and I said higher indifference curve means higher level of satisfaction. So here, this IC2 indifference curve 2 means you can consume more of good A and you can consume more of good B. Okay, IC3 means you can consume more of good A and you can consume more of good B. And that shows an increase in the level of satisfaction. Where is indifference curve do not intersect? Oh, it should be here. Okay, let's see. It should be here. Okay, well, let's go on. Let's go on. So let's talk about, let me see if I have it somewhere. No. I wanted to show you why indifference curves do not intersect. So here, what that means that you wouldn't have an indifference curve like this. So if you have an indifference curves intersecting one another, yeah, this is what it looks like. What that means is that you would have two different levels of satisfaction, and it would also violate the principle of the axiom of transitivity. Okay, because the axiom of transitivity says A is greater than B, B is greater than C, and A would also be greater than C. But if indifference curve intersect, there's every tendency that you have C on another indifference curve, and that's two different levels of satisfaction. Okay. Let's go on. So indifference map, I already mentioned more than one indifference curve. An indifference map shows more than one indifference curve. It shows an increase or decrease in consumer satisfaction given the income and market price of goods and services. All right. So what can make you buy more of a good or buy less of a good? Okay. If you earn more money, which is income, or if the businesses or if the businesses decrease or if there's a decrease in price. So if there's a decrease in price, your indifference curve will shift forward. So if there's a decrease in price and your income does not change, it stays the same, your indifference curve might move forward. If your income increases and price stays the same, does not change, your indifference curve would also move forward. Just as your indifference curve moves forward, your indifference curve can also move downwards when there's an increase in price or your income falls. Okay, you possibly purchase less of the two goods. So your satisfaction or the more of good A that and good B that you buy will be heavily dependent on the income that you earn and the market price of goods and services. Now, let's talk about the marginal rate of substitution. So in cardinal utility, we talked about law of diminishing marginal utility. In ordinal utility, we are going to be talking about the marginal rate of substitution. The marginal rate of substitution. The marginal rate is the rate, or the marginal rate of substitution is the rate at which one good is substituted for another while keeping the level of satisfaction the same. The slope of the indifference curve depicts the marginal rate of substitution. I'll show you the slope, just like the slope of, the indifference curve slope that we talked about, which is expressed at marginal rate of substitution A, B equals changes in good A, all of it changes in good B. What this means is that for you to have, for example, an additional unit of good A, B, you have to give up good A. So marginal rate of substitution simply saying that the rate at which you give up one good for another, okay, at the rate at which you substitute one good for another. So if I'm going to buy more of iPhones, then I might have to give up one unit of Samsung, or the 2 units of Techno. When we talk about trade-off, for you to have more of one, you have to give up a unit or more of another. All right. So the marginal rate of substitution looks at or examines how one good is substituted for another, and that slope. Let me show you this slope here. This slope here. Okay, this slope right here measures or depicts marginal rate of substitution. What that means is, for example, if I'm going to look at the marginal rate of substitution here, okay, that's 6 minus 4 here, right? You also have, 2 minus 4. So what that is telling you here is that for me to have 2 units of this, okay, extra 2 units of this, I have to give up 2 units of this. Okay, 6 minus 4. All right, from A to B, the marginal rate of substitution will be 2 or minus 2. So I have to give up 2 to have additional 2 of good B. All right, that's the marginal rate of substitution. That's what it means by the MRS measures the slope of the indifference curve. The MRS measures the slope of the indifference curve. Let's forge ahead. Okay, so let's take a look at diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Just like when we talked about law of diminishing marginal utility, you also have that uh, uh, elements in this definition, in this explanation. The diminishing marginal rate of substitution is an economic principle that states that as consumers consume more of one good, the amount of another good they are willing to give up to get one more unit of that first good decreases. This is because the consumer satisfaction from consuming the first good increases at a diminishing rate. So initially it increases, but decreases over time. For example, a consumer who is hungry is willing to give up a lot of money for a chicken burger. However, as they eat more chicken burgers, they become less and less hungry, and they are willing to give up less and less money for each additional chicken burger because they're going to get tired of chicken burgers. Okay, just like when we talked about law of diminishing marginal utility. Now let's take a look at the other types of indifference curve. We'll have perfect substitutes. And what are perfect substitutes? Goods are perfect substitutes when the utility derived from each good is the same. It also means that the indifference curve has a constant slope and the substitution rate between two goods are fixed. What are perfect substitutes? Goods that can be used to completely replace another. For example, Samsung and iPhone are perfect substitutes. Okay? And you could take a look at different goods along that line. It's either people prefer Samsung or they prefer an iPhone. Okay, so if they are going to substitute, except the functions are different. Okay, if the functions are the same, for example, two types of phones that they are within the same category, of course, if you are going to change from Samsung, okay, you would also have, if it's one unit, if it's one phone that you have in Samsung, you're going to have, you want to change, you're going to have one iPhone. You're not going to buy two iPhones because they literally give you the same level of satisfaction. They literally give you the same level of satisfaction. Okay? Do you get that? All right. So if you are always going to change, it will have to be the same unit, one for one. Two, if maybe it's two phones that you have that carried out that does what you do. Okay, two phones of Samsung, you would be willing to give up. You'll be willing to have two phones of two iPhones, especially if they are within the same, if they have the same capacity, they do the same. Okay, that's what this means by constant slope. Constant slope simply means that you have to always give up the same amount to have the same, an extra unit of that, one for one. Okay, or two for two, or three for three, or four for four, or five for five. Okay, so let's take a look at perfect complements. So perfect complements are goods that are used jointly. A table and chairs, cars and petrol. All right, so you have here, for example, if you have one table, one reading table, okay, so you would also have one. So one table, one chair. And two tables, two chairs. Okay, that's what we give you the satisfaction that you need. One phone and one earpiece. All right, a top and a trouser. Okay, one top and one trouser. I mean, all things being equal. I know there's fashion nowadays that people can wear like 5 trousers at the same time. All right, But if that's the norm, then you say one top and 5 trousers. But the norm is one top and one trouser. All right? Or one top and one skirt, or one top and one jean, or two tops and two jeans. All right? They comes in pair. They are in pair. All right? All right, so perfect complements are goods that are completely used together. Your toothpaste and your toothbrush are perfect complement. So you need one roll of toothpaste. You need one the sachet of toothpaste or tube of toothpaste with one unit of brush or one piece of brush. Okay, they're used together. Okay, so let's take a look at budget line. A budget line shows the combination of two goods a consumer can afford given income and price. I already mentioned when I was talking about indifference map. This can be seen in figure 2.7. The budget equation is PA times QA plus PB times QB equals Y. Y is income. PA is price of A times quantity of A plus price of B times quantity of B. If you add these both together, they must give you your income. It means that if you have $10, you can't spend more than that $10. If we had all the quantity of goods that you buy, combination of good A and good B, they will literally give you your income. Why? So this is the budget line. Everything within this line you can afford. Everything outside this line you cannot afford. Even when you borrow, it will still be within this line. Okay? That's the concept of budget line. So what are some of the chapter overview? Consumer preferences are choices that consumers make to maximize their satisfaction. The assumption of consumer preferences include completeness, transitivity, more is better. Utility means satisfaction. Cardinal utility can be measured in numbers, utils, and ordinal utility can be ranked in terms of preferences. Let's take a look at the review question. What are the assumptions about consumer preferences? What does it mean when we say more of a good is better? Explain your answer using a graph. What is the difference between economic good and economic bad? What is utility? How is utility measured? It's cardinal and ordinal, we talked about. What is the law of diminishing marginal utility? Draw the graph. State and explain the consumer equilibrium for a single good and multiple goods. What is consistency of choice? What is an indifference curve? Draw the graph. What is an indifference map? Draw the graph. What is the marginal rate of substitution? What does the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution say? What are perfect substitutes? Draw the graph. What are perfect complements? Draw the graph. And what is a budget line? Draw the graph. And these are the references for further reading. Okay. So those are the explanations of the concept of theory of consumer behavior. So we talked about axioms of consumer preferences. We talked about utility. We talked about indifference curve, and we talked about the budget line. Okay. I hope this has been quite clear. All right. If you have any questions, you can leave it in my comment section. I would attend to you, and I hope this people are able to learn from this. All right. Until I see you in the next class. Bye-bye.